When I woke up that morning, I wasn't surprised to see everyone lying in bed still. They were still there for the same reason that I was. There was only a handful of things to do around the house, one of which is to check the calendar. It was the same routine we had every time we lost someone. Lay in bed and try to forget where we are. See how long we can go without acknowledging the pain. Luckily, Grace took the initiative. "Happy birthday, Andy," she muttered, just loud enough for us to hear. We all got ready, taking turns in the shower and brushing our teeth. Soap was reserved for once a week, so they mostly consisted of lukewarm, cold if you were lost. Not that it mattered too much, however. The smell of mildew overpowered everything anyway. Breakfast was quiet as we were already in a pretty glum mood. Dry, stale Cheerios. Then it was business as usual. Mope around the house. Try to keep yourself occupied. As I found a corner to sit and ponder in, I understood why Andy had gotten so fed up with this place. It was so repetitive, so hopeless. As I looked out the window of the sunroom, wondering what the bodies were off doing in the daytime, I heard Ethan and Bear enter. I had been so lost in thought, I had hardly noticed the Monopoly board still lying on the floor. Though I really didn't feel like talking, I forced myself to. Dang. Still going, huh? Somehow he just keeps managing to hang on, Bear said in an exasperated tone. Ethan smiled but didn't say anything as he took a seat. I joined him on the floor. "How are you guys doing?" "Good," Bear instantly said without looking up from the board. Ethan and I gave each other a knowing look. He sighed. "Good. It's been a long day for sure, but it'll be good." "Yeah," I nodded. I watched them for a while before standing to head to the corner by the kitchen. It was the one corner that no one ever wanted, especially not on a day like this. Before I left, I bent over and wrapped my arms around Bear from behind. I could feel her stiffness, her sadness, her grief. I kissed the back of her head, and she reached a hand up, squeezed my arm. I smiled reassuringly at Ethan, and he smiled back. I headed through the dining room and nearly tripped over Jan as I rounded the corner. It turned out that she had the same idea as me. She sat with her back to the wall, staring straight at the yellow room door. "Oh, jeez, sorry, Jen." She looked up to me with a vacant expression. "Oh, that's okay, hon." Instantly, she went right back to looking at the barrier. I stepped around and slid down the wall beside her. "Everything all right?" "Mm-hmm." "Well, considering that's your least favorite part of the house," I start, pointing at the door, "and you're willingly staring at it, I'm obligated to not believe you. She sighed and laughed nervously. Nothing. It's okay. I'm fine. Jen, I prodded. Talk to me. We're all we've got around here. She thought for a moment before speaking. I'm really sorry about Andy, Joel. I know how bad it must hurt. I swallowed before speaking. Yeah, somehow losing people in here hurts more than out there. Must be because we have more to lose. Jen softly chuckled. Tell me about it. There was another pause before I spoke again. I'm sorry about Mark too. You shouldn't have to go through this alone. Thanks. Is that what's bothering you? She nodded, then pursed her lips. I miss him so much. And I know today is about Andy, but she just got me thinking. Andy wouldn't have wanted today to be about her, I said to the floor. She never wanted anything to be about her. She was so sweet. What does she have you thinking about? Jan shook her head. She went to go find it, Joel. She believed she could. That it was out there. She looked at me. This is no place for a baby to grow up. Especially not without their father. Andy never came back, Joel. The sentence felt like a gut punch. That means that she either found it and got out, or... I mean, if she did, then that means it's out there. There's no way I'd stand a chance trying to get there, and if she didn't, then... well, that means this is it. This is our lives forever. 6 rooms and stale Cheerios. I placed an arm around her shoulder. We're going to get out, Jen. I don't know how, but we will. Remember your dream. You told me that you thought it was a sign. She smiled as she wiped tears from her eyes. Yeah, well, I've been known to dream too much sometimes. Nonsense. We need people to dream like that. People like you, I told her. People like Andy. Jan placed a hand on my knee and smiled. We're going to get everyone out of here, and your kid will have a perfectly normal life. I hope so, she said wistfully. I looked at the floor for a while longer in silence. Speaking of the children topic, I'm worried about Dan, I whispered. Why do you say that? I mean, you've seen how quiet he's been lately. She nodded solemnly. Yesterday, I saw him looking out the window. He brought up Larry. Jan visibly winced. How? Yeah. I could see her bite her cheek. Depression. I'm pretty sure he's depressed. Is that something new? I think we all kind of are. She giggled, but I wasn't joking. I think it's gotten pretty severe after what happened with Larry. Plus, at the beginning, I think he's seen the most since we got here. That's true. We just need to really be there for him, I think. Remind him that we need him. I nodded. Absolutely. Jen smiled. Thanks for talking with me, Joel. I needed that. Thank you too. I definitely. My heart leaped into my throat, and Jan's baby probably leaped into hers. Did you hear that? She whispered. Did that just come from? From the yellow room door. We heard a tiny, rhythmic tapping. It was small, barely detectable, but it sounded like pounding in the quiet of the house. I scrambled to my feet and helped Jan up as well. Someone's knocking at the door. Do you think it's the creature? There's no way. It's too quiet. Maybe it's trying to trick us. Something about that rhythm sounded familiar. I ran back into my head until I realized it was the door knock we use after a run. It was so whoever was on the other side would know it was one of us. Jan, that's our code. Jan was silent for a moment before peeking her head around the corner into the dining room. Claire, gather everyone and get them into the bedroom, right away. I could hear Claire leap up and begin looping through the house. Everyone appeared into the hall, each one from the living room, and looked at us with worried faces. Jan turned to me. Come on, let's go. She began moving back to the group, but I remained still. Joel, let's go. Someone is out there, Jen. No, there's not. Everyone's already right here. It has to be that thing. Louder this time. Slightly faster. I looked at Jan. She looked at me in desperation. Behind her, I could see everyone staring, terrified. They definitely heard it now, too. What is that? Ethan asked. Someone's knocking at the door. Who? I don't know, I said, turning. Get in the room. I'm going to find out. Joel, Jan pleaded. Jan's right, Benjamin said. This has to be a trap. Or someone needs our help. Are you hearing yourself? We've been alone here for 4 years. Who else could it be? This place is always messing with us. Who's to say it's not doing that right now? I stepped towards the door. Get in the room. If it is a trap, then I don't want you all getting hurt. Daniel rushed forward and grabbed me. Cut it out. I'm not gonna let you get yourself killed. Get off me. I'm not letting whoever it is out there get killed either. There's no one out there. The taps were suddenly interrupted by the squeals of the creature, squeals that were right below us. Daniel and I looked at each other for a brief moment, acknowledging the same thing. If it was down there, then something else was at the door. Open the door, a voice pleaded from the other side, giving up on the soft taps. My heart suddenly stopped as the tone echoed in my ears. I immediately knew who it was. Get in the room! I screamed at the group before rushing forward. To my surprise, I found Dan right there beside me. I didn't argue. There was no time. We grabbed the wooden pantry and with all our combined adrenaline practically threw it across the kitchen. I could hear the creature below thundering towards the stairs while banging violently on its instrument. Only an inch away through the door, I could hear the screams and pleas for help. I clicked off the lock and thrust the door open. After that, time moved in slow motion. There she lay, bloody on the floor. She had several large cuts along her arms, and her skin was bruised to black in several places. Her hair was long and matted from being away so long, and her clothes were tatters and shreds. A trail of blood was streaking across the orange shag carpet, coming from the open dark door and ending where she lay. She looked up at me with beautiful grey eyes. They were full of tears and hope as she saw my face. I immediately wanted to start sobbing as I took her in. I barely gasped out. That was all the time I had. The thing was at the stairs, and we had 5 seconds at most. 5. Daniel screamed blurry words into my ears, snapping me back to reality. I heard the creature bound up the entire flight of steps in 2 Goliath strides, squealing the whole way. Andy reached up to me, and I bent down and grabbed her warm, shaking hand. 4. Its flesh-patched hand slapped around the edge of the doorframe. Immediately, images of the nameless man being dragged through the door flashed in my head. Adrenaline coursed through every channel of my body as I began to lift Andy. Daniel grabbed a hold of her other arm and helped. 3. Daniel was right to never tell me what the creature looked like. Even if he had, I don't think I ever could have imagined just how horrific it was. Its whole body was like its arms, elongated, skeletal, and covered in tumorous bumps. The vile quilt of skin was a suit it wore all over every inch of its figure, even its head. Its bald skull was composed of more small patches that led straight up to its face. Oh God, its face. It wasn't even its own. At least not the skin on it. The eye sockets on its sadistic mask have been stretched open far too wide to fit its massive head. Within 2 enormous white eyes bulged out, looking at us with pure excitement. It had no iris, only 2 large black pupils. The mouth was just as horrific, stretched too wide like the eyes, revealing a set of elongated, clenched, disturbingly human teeth. It pulled itself through the door and squealed with delight. It eagerly reached up just below its neck, where a long rectangular bump protruded from someone's skin, and began to tap on it. Tink, tink, tock, blink. The xylophone that it was always banging on was under its vile flesh. 2. We had Andy to her feet and were only a foot away from the door. She staggered on her lacerated legs, struggling forward. She could hardly move. I wondered for a split second how long had she pushed her body just to make it back to us before collapsing. I quickly stepped behind her, letting Daniel take most of her weight, and lifted her legs, shoving forward with my shoulders and sending them both through the door. 1. I heard its hands and legs behind me as I scurried across the floor. I whipped my head to see that I was too late. The thing towered over me, lifting a long arm to snatch me up. As it did, it gave me one last horrific sight to hold on to. It opened its clenched teeth, and in place of its squeal, it let out a high-pitched, chilling, and excited. It could talk. 0. I braced myself. So many thoughts flooded into my frantic brain. How bad would this hurt? Would I scream? What was it going to do with me? How fast would I die? What part of its body would it wear my skin on? I suppose none of it mattered anymore. The last thought I had was of home, back in the countryside, her and I sitting in the woods, her smile, her warmth. Suddenly I heard the thing scream. Not its usual gleeful screech, a pained and angry cry. I opened my eyes that had found themselves closed to see Ethan at my side, the sharpened broomstick in hand jammed into the creature's neck. It grabbed at the rod with its claw, trying to pull it out, and yelled in a gargled sound. I turned to Ethan, who looked shocked that he had actually just done what he did. I'm sure my face was just as surprised. However, I pulled myself back to the moment the creature from downstairs was already recovering. I grabbed Ethan by the shirt and yanked him through the door. Once we were through, I slammed it shut and fiddled with the lock. Finally, I got it, and collapsed on the floor next to a frazzled Ethan. Behind us, it pounded on the door, whimpering and screaming the whole time. I shakingly turned to my friend. Ethan, you just... I would have been... Thank you. He gasped and was shaking like a madman. I'm sure his adrenaline was through the roof. Yeah, man, no problem, he said, looking dead ahead. Andy! I suddenly heard Bear mutter from the hallway. A few people let out gasps as they saw Daniel holding the bloodied girl. My heart stopped again as my brain fully processed the entire last minute. Oh my gosh, Andy. I quickly stumbled over to them on all fours and gently took her face in my hand. Oh my Andy. She smiled as she looked up at me and lifted her hand to rest on mine on her cheek. Joe, how did you? Where were you? My brain couldn't form complete sentences. The room was spinning. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She spoke first. I missed you. Tears immediately began to spill from my eyes. I missed you too. I bent over and pressed my forehead to hers as I sobbed. Douse, Daniel shouted. Blankets, grab anything to stop the bleeding. His sentence reminded me that she was hurt. Oh my gosh, you're bleeding. Hang on, honey, we'll stop it. As I surveyed the damage, I realized how truly bad it was. She had more cuts than I had initially realized, deep, long cuts. She had already lost so much blood since we had just brought her in. I could only imagine how much she lost on her way to the door. Andy shook her head. Don't worry about me. Joel, listen. Shh. I stammered, brushing the sides of her face and stroking her hair. Stop talking. You just need to take it easy. We'll get you better. Several people rushed over with all the cloth they could find. Daniel and I gently lifted her and lay her on top of them. Then the others set to work, wrapping the cuts as tight as possible. Bear and Ethan dropped next to us and looked down at her in pure grief. Bear took one of her free hands. Andy, she weakly smiled. Hey, Bear. Hey, Ethan. Ethan wiped his eyes and then smiled at her. What took you so long? He nervously choked. Andy laughed and began to choke a bit. We held her as she regained her breath, then smugly said, You have no idea. Andy, I told her, you need to stop talking. No, Joel, you need to listen to me. I swallowed my sobs. What's wrong? I watched her swallow as well. It's somewhere beneath us. I looked down at her with a puzzled expression. What? That thing? I said, pointing to the door. We know, honey. It's always been down there. Now don't talk. No. Joel. She squeezed my hand tightly. I found it. Everyone stopped moving at once. What do you mean you found it? I found it. I found the exit. It's so far below. Way down. But it's there. Everyone looked at each other. It was clear that nobody knew what to think. Jan looked amazed. Grace looked horrified. Ben looked lost in thought. Daniel had no expression at all. He simply kept tending to her cuts. I'm so sorry, Andy said, breaking the long pause. You don't have anything to be sorry about, Andy. I cooed as I continued to run my hand through her hair. It was there. I saw it. But the house, I couldn't get to it. I thought if I found it, I could lead you guys there. So I just came back. But I got really hurt. She broke out into another fit of coughs. Blood spewed from her mouth. I looked at Daniel in desperation. He didn't make eye contact, but I knew he saw me looking. He gently shook his head. I began to break down. It's okay, Andy. You did so well. I was walking for so long, so deep. Her eyes began to close. Hey! No, no, no. Andy, stay away. Don't close your eyes. She held them open as she struggled to breathe. Joel? Yeah. She looked at me and pulled my hand to her lips. Don't feel guilty. I felt a warm breath release across my fingertips. Then, nothing at all. Everyone was still. So was my heartbeat. The thing still pounded on the door behind us, but I didn't hear it. Everything was spinning. Everyone sat in silence, defeated. There was nothing we could do. The creature never brought us medical supplies. Not that that would have mattered. Andy was gone. The group and I gathered silently around her body for a long time, our soft sobs filling the otherwise quiet space. Bear lay her head onto the girl's stomach as she cried. Ethan just hugged his knees and stared, silent tears running down his face. I just wept into her shoulder as I slowly felt the warmth leave her. After a while, Daniel got up and walked to the kitchen. He grabbed an old rusty shovel the thing had left for us and walked out the front door. Claire wiped her eyes and followed him out as well. Nobody else moved. After a few hours, Daniel came back in and stood in the corner, resting his hands on the handle of the shovel. After another hour, I felt Jan's grip on my shoulder. Guys, it's getting dark out. I'm so sorry, but we have to. We can't leave her. I lifted my head to wipe my eyes, then nodded. I leaned over and kissed her forehead for a long time, then slipped my hand under the blood-soaked bed of blankets. I lifted her up and carried her outside. Ethan and Bear walking beside me. The horrible sensation of fear from the hills felt like nothing compared to the pain in my chest. Daniel stood by the hole he had dug next to Mark's grave. I lay Andy down next to it and stared at her for a while before folding the sides of the sheets over her beautiful face. Everyone else gathered around outside, except for Frank, who just stood in the doorway. He hadn't come out since the first day when he had gone for the hills with Hillary. Does anyone want to say something? Jan sniffled. Nobody stirred until Claire spoke first. You were such a sweet girl. You didn't deserve this. You can finally rest, sweetheart, Grace added. You're in a better place now. Goodbye, Andy, was as far as Jan got before breaking into sobs again. Ben put an arm around her. It was quiet again for a while before Ethan took his turn. He stepped forward to say something, but nothing came out. Instead, he took a deep breath and looked up as tears fell from his eyes. He bent over, plucked some grass from the ground, and gently lay it on her chest. I'm sorry. I wish I had flowers. You deserved something nice. This is the best I can do. Bear broke out into sobs and couldn't say anything. She just looked down at Andy with an expression of pure grief and agony. Daniel chose not to say anything. He looked down at her with an absent expression, but behind his eyes I could see sadness and rage. Frank was a man of very few words. I knew he didn't have anything. That just left me. Amidst the sound of crying, I thought, trying to compose myself to speak. I took a deep breath. I'm so sorry, Andy. I'm so sorry that you got stuck in a place like this. I'm sorry that it's where you had to. I caught myself and changed directions. I can't imagine what you saw down there. All the terrible things. But I know that you knew the dangers you were facing when you left. You risked your life so that we could escape. But you already were my escape, Andy. I breathed hard, trying not to break down. I promise you that you will not have died for nothing. We will get out of here, honey. We will. I promise. At that, I stepped forward and looked at Daniel. He nodded, and together we lowered her body into the hole. We buried her as the light outside grew dim. One by one, people trickled back inside, but I stayed. So did Ethan and Bear. We stood around the fresh pile of dirt until we saw the bodies come skipping up over the hills. Then we went back inside. The next day, everyone lay in bed for a long, long time. Even after they got up, I stayed. Bear lay there next to me on the floor. Jan came in and asked us if we wanted something to eat. I told her I was okay. You should eat something, I told Bear. She just shook her head as she lay silently. The next day went the same. I stayed in bed with Bear all day, just thinking long and hard about Andy, the memories I had with her, the times she had kept me sane. Then I began thinking about what she said. It's somewhere beneath us, way, way down. As I lay there, Bear suddenly spoke softly next to me. I'm sorry. Sorry about what? About Andy. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry too. Are you going to be okay? Yeah. Eventually. It just hurts. Are you? Yeah, I think so. We lay quiet again for a while before I asked, would you ever hate me? Bear rolled over and looked at me with a perplexed expression. What? What do you mean? Like, if I did something dumb, would you hate me? Her confusion changed to concern as she scooted closer to me. She reached out a hand and began to stroke my hair. You're worrying me, Joel. I looked back at her with a similar expression. You know I care about you a lot, Bear. You and Ethan and everyone. She nodded, waiting for me to continue. Looking into Bear's eyes, I felt a pang of guilt. I had thought Andy was dead. This whole time she'd been alive, and I had been getting close with. I think I need to call a meeting. Okay. Just promise me that you won't get mad. She bit her cheek, but then moved up against me, burying her face in my chest. I could never hate you. She didn't have to. I already hated myself. Bear and I stepped out of the room and made eye contact with Claire. Oh, hey, Joel. Bear. I'm glad to see you two out. Are you feeling alright? I smiled nervously. Yeah, I actually need to call a meeting. Oh, um, okay, Claire said, surprised. She peeked her head around the dining room and called out, "Hey guys, Joel and Bear are out of the room. Joel wants to have a meeting." Everyone began to murmur as they made their way to the parlor. We sat in our usual meeting circle and everyone eagerly looked at me. "Joel, what's going on? Everything okay?" Jan asked. Kind of. I just need to tell you all something. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I looked around the circle. The faces of the 8 closest people in my life stared back at me with concern. I knew how they were going to react already, but I didn't care. The last few days had me thinking, and everyone had to know the topic would come up eventually. "Well, what is it?" Grace nervously shifted. "You're making me nervous, honey." I readied myself. Here we go. Before Andy died, you all heard what she said. Everyone's eyes darted to the floor or the ceiling. Yeah, that. "What about it?" Grace asked nervously. "What about it?" "Grace, she said she found the exit." "Joel, the girl was bleeding out. She wasn't in her right mind." "I know you don't believe that," I told her. "I know none of you do. You all remember Ben's radio. Are we gonna pretend that didn't happen?" "Joel, I know you were upset," Jan cut in, "but calm down. Let's think about this for a moment." "It seems like you all already have, and that you know what has to happen." I looked around the circle. "If any of us want to get out of here, that exit is our only option." Nobody said anything again. "I'm going to go find it." What? Claire and Jan both asked at the same time. "Joel," Bear suddenly whispered at my side. "Joel, even if that was an option, you saw Andy," Ben said. "She already made that trip, and well, she barely made it back." I know that she didn't, but that doesn't mean we should give up." "No, Joel, that's exactly what it means," Jan said. "There's only 9 of us left. If we keep losing people, then we're gonna have nothing left." "It's better than being stuck here, fearing for our lives every day until we die, Jen." "No, it's really not. You told me the other day we're all we have around here. I'm not gonna let you go charging into God knows where just to die, Joel." "I'm sorry. Weren't you the one saying that this is no place to live? Don't you want your baby to have a normal life?" "Yes, but I also said that I wouldn't stand a chance of getting to the exit. None of us would was the point. Andy was gone for a year, Joel. And all that time just spent looking for the exit." "You're right. But Andy did stand a chance. Not only that, but she made it there and back. We don't even know for sure if she found it. Claire jumped in. How do we know if she did? Because she said she did. So you're just going to charge into the dark on her word alone? Yes! I shouted much louder than I intended. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Everyone stared at me in shock. In all my time with Andy, she was consistently questioning this house. How it worked, why it was here, what was below us. She saw what happened to Hillary, and the nameless man, and Matt, and Larry. When she heard that transmission from the radio, that was it. She knew she had to go. And when she left, I never understood why she did. I was so confused and afraid that she had just run out of hope and decided to go off herself. But when she came back, that was when it hit me. She'd done it for all of us, so that we could get out of here. She believed that there was a way out, and she went alone. And I just watched. I sat here and let her. I could have gone after her. I could have talked to her more while she was here, but I didn't. I did nothing. I can't do that anymore. I can't watch more people I care about die. I saw Mark get buried once, and I had to bury Andy twice. I'm not gonna watch anyone else get buried. So yes, I'm gonna go into the dark alone, because that's what I should have done with her in the first place. Everyone sat silent, just looking at me. You're wrong, Daniel said. You're not going down there. Not alone, 'cause I'm going with you. Daniel, I have to do this alone, I told him. Andy barely made it back by yourself, he started. If we go together, then we'll have better odds. Dan, I'm not going to let you risk your life. Oh, shut up and stop being a hypocrite, Joel. My life is nothing anymore. I've been staring at the window every day for the past few months, and those hills look better and better to me with each passing minute. I'm gonna die one way or another. Let me at least die trying to get us out of here. Please, Jen begged. Don't do this, you two. We're safe here. Safe? Daniel asked. We've got a demon in our basement, sweetheart. And the world around us kills people who step a little too far out of bounds. We survive on crackers and juice. How much more of us have to end up like Larry, Matt, or Mark before we're willing to charge down there? Jen winced at Mark's name drop. Fine, just go. If you two want to kill yourself, then I guess we can't stop you. I could see tears welling up in her eyes. So what's the plan, then? Benjamin asked. Just charge down there like Andy and find this thing. A map, I spoke. I'm going to make a map as I go down. Once we find it, we'll head straight back up, and then we can lead everyone straight there. Well, there you have it. When are we leaving? Daniel asked. Tomorrow night. I figured that thing would have gone further down to find us stuff for the basket. Hopefully, we can sneak by it. Daniel nodded. I looked around the room. I'm sorry, everyone. But I promise we'll find a way out of here. Suddenly, Bear spoke up, a look of betrayal on her face. Don't make promises you can't keep. With that, she stood hoitly before turning and whipping out of the room. One by one, the rest of my ragtag family followed, all except Dan. He remained, his eyes glued to the floor until everyone was gone. Then, when it was just him and I, our eyes met with the same knowing glance. We only had a little over 24 hours of guaranteed safety left. We had better enjoy it while we could. Well, hello everyone. Grim here. Tonight's story was part 3 of Somewhere Beneath Us, written by Inkwilder. As I said the last 2 weeks, I am in love with the story, and I hope everyone is starting to come along and enjoy it with me. Inkwilder, once more. Top job, chef's kiss, all of that. You are a very talented writer, and I am again so grateful that you even let me narrate this story. Now on to further news. There really isn't any. I just wanted to tell you all that you're very important, and that each and every one of you has a purpose, and you will find that purpose, I promise you. Alright. I won't drag this out, so please, if you like today's video, like and subscribe, do all of the stuff that people want you to do, leave a comment, etc. Especially if you manage to make it all the way here. In fact, let's play a little game. If you manage to make it all the way to the end, type in the chat logs or whatever it is, or the comment section, potato. Just type in potato. Then I'll know who my loyal listeners are. But yeah, like, subscribe, write potato. Anyway, be safe wherever you are. Have a good night or day. And as always, I am Grim. And I'm, well, signing off.